When you think about regulation in many parts of the world, it's done in the rearview mirror, meaning they regulate in the past. I think when you think about what's happening in this part of the world, they're regulating for the future. They understand and they're building things that are future oriented, and that is so huge and so important because they have a mindset of how do I use regulation to be able to help and enhance value as opposed to simply manage the downside. They're balancing, recognize that yes, I need to control this. Yes, there's a downside, but they're balancing that with an upside potential. So I think this region is really, really well positioned.
Welcome to Flavors of Ambition. I'm thrilled that you could join me, Ramia Faraj, as we dive into another absorbing conversation. Today, we're excited to be joined by two exceptional leaders at the forefront of technology and innovation. First, we welcome Joseph Bradley, the visionary CEO of Tonomus. Joseph is renowned for redefining the intersection of humanity and technology, spearheading the world's first cognitive community, and driving transformative AI solutions. His work has reshaped industries, and today he joins us to share his unique insights on technology, leadership, and the future of innovation. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you.
And we also have the pleasure of welcoming BCG Senior Partner David Panhans. As a leader of BCG's technology, media, and telecommunications practice, he's driving digital and analytics efforts across the Middle East and brings a wealth of expertise on navigating the challenges and the opportunities in today's dynamic tech landscape. Hello, David.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Wonderful to chat with you both today. Now, Joseph, you have had a remarkable career spanning major tech firms and groundbreaking innovation. What first sparked your passion for technology and for business?
Well, I like to tell you it was absolutely planned, but it really wasn't. When I was growing up, I wanted to be an NBA basketball player. And so I practiced every day and I got really great. And then something happened unexpectedly. I was born with scoliosis and my spine kept growing. And so the curvature got to be too great that I had to have surgery. And that stopped basketball for a full year. I had to learn to walk again, and it was really hard. So I was in school and I was moping around. And my English teacher said, "What are you doing, kid? You got a lot of talents. How about you try speech and debate?" And I was like, speech and debate? I mean, you can't get a letter jacket in speech and debate. Well, lo and behold, she kept at me, and I really, really enjoyed it. I started in, I won state champions, national championships, and in preparing for all of that, technology was a big player in that, right? You had to do so much research. The internet was just coming on, and it really, really got me energized about technology. And so when I got out of school and I began to look and think about where I wanted to go, I really wasn't concerned about the role. I was just concerned about, let's just get at it. Let's get the experience. So I started in telecommunications and actually in finance. And then they moved me to marketing. And then they moved me to the network side. Then they moved me to the technology side. And by the time I got through like 4 or 5 years, I had seen pretty much every aspect of the business because I was open to those different learning paths. And then that just adopted me to get into technology.
David, you've also had a remarkable career spanning industries from manufacturing with Mercedes-Benz to shaping telecommunications infrastructure and strategy. What first ignited your passion for technology and for business, and how has that evolved over the years?
Yeah. As someone who grew up in Germany, always had a passion for the combination of engines and wheels. So naturally, I was attracted by the automotive industry in Germany. Started, as you mentioned, a small role in Sindelfingen at the time, which is the main plant of Mercedes in south of Stuttgart. So I decided then after some time at Mercedes that this large corporate world is probably not where I see myself. So I moved on. And then basically in the .com era in Berlin, I joined a large, at the time actually one of the largest European internet startups, Duo.com at the time in Berlin. And then, was attracted by the technology layers, was attracted by the disruption of the traditional e-commerce space, and then spent 2 years in an internet startup. After that, also probably driven by the end of the .com boom in the early millennium, I started my journey as a consultant. but in the field of technology. And I started actually at telecommunication operators. It was not the target per se, but they were the big spenders in these days, and they needed to figure out what else can we do apart from our traditional network services. And ever since, I've stick to technology as my focal point of interest, convinced by the fact that technology will advance the world.
I think that we're all convinced of that. And tell me, what actually brought you both to this region?
Well, for me, it was an amazing story of an opportunity to actually show how we as humans can enhance our way of life, enhance how we live, but also take care of the planet at the same time. And I have to say, I've been to a lot of places in the world, but I've never been to a place that has been so welcoming to me and my family. It is absolutely amazing. I'll tell one quick story. I remember when I first I got to Riyadh, and then I had to fly to Neom, Tabuk. So I get to the airport, and lady says, "Are you, Tabuk? Are you sure? Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah. I'm going to Tabuk. Yeah. She goes, "Okay." So I get to Tabuk, we land, and I get off the plane, and there had to be, I don't know, 15, 20 people would not leave my side until they were absolutely sure that my driver was coming to take me to this new place called Neom. They invited me to their homes. I had Bedouins, okay, come on, I'm gonna go to the right, share lamb with me. I mean, by the time I was there in 1 week, I must have had, I think, 2 or 3 dinners with so many different families. The feeling of welcome was just so great for me, and I will always be thankful for the people of Saudi.
Absolutely. And an experience that many of us can actually identify with. We've all had these experiences with the various cultures in this region and the welcoming nature of those cultures.
Yeah, same is true for me. I mean, my journey in the Middle East started, let's say, relatively early. I actually moved to Dubai in 2006. And I was intrigued at the time by the ambition that came out, in particular out of the Emirate of Dubai at the point in time. And the Palm was announced, the highest skyscraper of the world was announced. There was something built which was called the World, and it took my attention. And then by looking more and more into what was happening here in the region, I also realized that from a telecommunications space, it was an incredibly interesting moment because the monopolies were actually broken up at that point in time. So new licenses were issued. The second operators were launched, Du in the United Emirates, Mobily at the time in the kingdom. And I would just wanted to be part of that journey. And so joined then a consultancy here in the Middle East and focused then on, basically being part of the journey of building telecom operators from scratch. And that's what I have been doing now for 18 years. And what was potentially planned as a 2-3 year international exciting experience, turned out to become the center of my life. My 3 kids are born here, and we feel home here in the Middle East.
I can testify to that having come here on holiday in 2001 and I'm still here.
Yeah.
So, have you noticed that hospitality is a celebrated feature of business in this region? Do they go hand in hand?
If you're in the US, I was an African American in technology. So that means that I'm the only. What I mean by that is when I go to a conference or I go to a room, I'm typically going to be the only African American there. When I got to this region, no place is perfect, but it was the first time where I felt, man, they don't see me as a African American executive. Saudi sees me as a tech executive. Color isn't an issue. And I was sitting there going, I have never before felt so belonged and so comfortable in a setting that should have been foreign, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It was uplifting. And I think that when I think about my experience at Neom with over 120 plus nationalities, it is so uplifting, and that feeling of belonging and not having to worry about how to necessarily fit into an environment, I think has unlocked a huge area of personal productivity in my life and joy. And I hope that others around the world and all of my peers, I keep talking about it, you got to come down and you got to experience it.
That's such a beautiful story. And what's wonderful is that in Saudi, you were able to focus 100% at the task at hand rather than diverting half of your energies to wondering whether or not you actually fit in. So that's just wonderful. And thank you for sharing that with us. What would you say is your favorite regional dish, and what types of feelings does that evoke? I can't narrow it down. I have so many favorite dishes, but you must have one, having been here for, how many years have you been here now?
Yeah, 5 years. Well, it's funny. I know my family is like, there's no way. I did not like lamb. I mean, there was no way I was not in the U.S. Did not like lamb. And we went to this. We got one of our first dinners, and this lovely lady was being really nice. Can't mention her name, but she served this beautiful dish. But on the table was this lamb, and I was like, oh God, oh my God, oh my God, I gotta taste this. I gotta eat this. Well, after I had the first bite, I think I ate half the lamb.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was lamb kabsa, I think it was called. Something like lamb with a rice dish. Amazing. I mean, now when I go to any type of family gathering or a restaurant, I mean, lamb is one of my favorite dishes. So
David, flavors of ambition. You have to share your favorite dish.
Yeah, look, I think the food experience across the even wider Middle East is quite impressive. There's delicious food from Lebanon, Levante area, Syria, then also in the GCC countries, but then also North Africa, of course. I have a array of food that I really like. Now here in the GCC regions, I join you on the rice dishes, kapsa in the KSA, or mashbouz, I think they call it here more in the UAE. But my all-time favorite remains actually a breakfast dish, which is full medames, which I discovered back in the days in Cairo when I had a project there. And since then, I'm almost selecting my hotels when traveling based on the quality of the full medames that they serve. So this is my favorite dish here in the region.
David, I want to ask you to share your ideas on how emerging technologies and digital transformation are really set to reshape businesses and economies. What opportunities are they unlocking, and what can leaders, entrepreneurs, and citizens aspire to achieve in this new digital era?
So emerging technologies as well as digital transformation will lead to a more connected, a more intelligent, and a more productive world, automated world as well, which bears, in our view, advantages for not only governments but also actors in the government in the industry, such as existing businesses and entrepreneurs, but also actually the citizens and the consumers in these markets. So for governments, it is obviously, in particular here in the region, a big aspiration to diversify the economies away from an oil-based economies in the past. Today, the UAE. The digital economy in the UAE represents already almost 10% of the national GDP, and the aspirations for the next decades are to double this contribution to like 20% by 2021. It's 31. Let's say 35, which is obviously a significant contributor to the economy. The investment into these new technologies will create new jobs. They will attract highly qualified talent to the region. It will lead through automation processes to productivity enhancements for the economy and ultimately to economic growth for the nations. Now, digital infrastructure also leads to a playground for innovation and new business models. And I think we see a surge of new startups across the region already for the last couple of years, and investment also in the regions are rising. We have witnessed successes such as in e-commerce, such as Noon and others, but then also in the transportation and delivery services such as Karim, really services that have been nationed to the region and have become unicorns in their field. You can observe equal advances now in the financial industry. The VO Bank was just launched recently by Abu Dhabi-based ADQ. And then you see STC Pays, which are now evolving into STC banks. So obviously also in the financial sector, but then it doesn't stop there. It goes into healthcare, it goes into education. So pretty much all sectors are affected by digital evolution, actually not affected, actually benefit from the digital evolution. And this opens a playground for a lot of new business model to strive. And lastly, from a citizen perspective, UAE has already today one of the most advanced e-government services worldwide, and other GCC nations are also catching up and also driving a lot of efforts in these directions. So obviously a huge advancement for the citizen. And then these citizens are also the consumers. And from a consumer perspective, we mentioned already the array of new services, the customer experience enhancements that we have witnessed already. Look, as AI becomes more autonomous, obviously also challenges arise around privacy or security concerns. What's, in your view, Joseph, what are the challenges, or how can individuals, companies, and economies or economy leaders face these challenges?
So I think when we think about privacy, I think it's really important to understand that there's a shift that has occurred, right? Privacy is now contextually based. And what I mean by that is it's directly proportional to the value that an individual receives. And so I think it's really important to understand that in this world of dealing with privacy, you have to understand people want to make sure they're clear about what that value is. And so to do that, it has to be three things. One, it has to be reliable. So it has to be accurate. Two, it has to be transparent. No black box stuff. I got to be able to see how it came up with this information. What are you doing with it? I got to be able to clearly see that audit trail. And then lastly, I think is really important. You have to talk about agency, meaning AI is not there to replace human decision making. It is there to augment human decision making. And I think that's the storyline that you have to go with now, because that's where the technology is at this point.
Absolutely. And David, as the lead for BCG's technology, media, and telecommunications practice, you have outlined a roadmap for embracing a digital and AI first strategy in this region. Can you unpack the specific recommendations that you've identified?
I mean, when we refer to the digital first approach, I wouldn't even say it's only applicable now for this region. I think it's a general belief that we need to change the mindset for business leaders to move away from considering technology as an enabler. And if you read traditional strategies, you see that's our ambition, these are our business lines, that's what we want to achieve. And by the way, we need some enablers, and that means some data infrastructure and so on. We believe that this is not bringing you very far in the internal adoption of these technologies. And we need to flip the coin and actually think about, what do we ultimately want to achieve in the markets? How do we want to reach our customers? What is the ultimate digital experience we want to create? What are the channels we want to reach them? How can we use also all the technologies internally to become more agile and get also the promised productivity gains? And we believe that actually the technology impact, let's use the example of an AI, the time you should spend to program that algorithm is probably 10% of the effort. Then the time you need to spend and the effort to make sure that it's well connected to your data infrastructure is probably 20% of your efforts. But 70% of the efforts, it's actually a cultural mindset effort that needs to be done across the organization to make sure that people embrace new ways of working, that people let go from the past, that people delegate work differently, distribute work differently, work in a more agile world. And that is not achievable if you look at technology as an enabler. It is only achievable if you look at technology as a business imperative that CEOs need to think about in the morning when they wake up.
Joseph, so you've also created the Internet of Everything, transforming industries worldwide. What is IoE and what impact has it had so far?
So really what IoE came about several years ago at Cisco, we began to understand that as we have all these things that we interact with around the world, what if these things could actually give us real information? What if we could see and understand from these things' points of view? And that brought about this notion of the Internet of Things, connecting things. But then we began to quickly understand, well, that's only a very small portion of the conversation. In actuality, it's not just things, but it's the intersection of people, process, data, and things that draws the notion of the Internet of Everything. And so what's happened is, if you think about it in every day-to-day life, we've got now a really good understanding of the real-time environment. We know exactly what's happening in the real world, whether it's smart homes coming on, turning your lights, or whether it's being able to manage traffic management, knowing what's happening right now, or digital twin environments, being modeling and creating the planet. When you think about the market for IoE, it's almost a $500 billion now. And it's all about understanding and giving a really good description of what is happening today, the real-time environment. Now, where we're going to with AI, what we've understood is real-time information is actually too late. The damage is already done. And we're moving from being real-time into the world of AI, which is predictive and proactive. And that's where we're headed today.
So essentially, everything, including people, things, and data, the link between all of them. And just when we thought we had mastered smart cities, you have introduced the concept of cognitive cities. So, how do they differ from the traditional smart city, and what do they represent for the future of urban development?
So when you think about a smart city, everything that we did was all about real-time information, getting real-time information. It wasn't about the quality or use of the data. So in a smart city, it's real time. In a cognitive city, it is about being predictive and proactive. A smart city collects a lot of data, but it only uses 5% of what it collects. A cognitive city collects a lot of data, but it uses 95% of that data to be very predictive and proactive. A smart city, you tend to talk about things. You talk about buildings, you talk about assets, you talk about infrastructure. A cognitive city, as we talked about with Identic AI and your whole personal, your personal assistant, it becomes about people. It is people centric, and everything grows from there. You're designing the city around experiences. In a smart city, you tend to talk about infrastructure development. Very difficult to keep infrastructure development going, very costly. In a cognitive city, it's about intelligence. And the cognitive city understands that by reshaping all this digital information that I have, I can provide you with fundamentally new experiences that are more sustainable and far more inclusive.
So, the concept of digital twins is really evolving and it's doing so rapidly. How do digital twins fit into the broader view of cognitive cities? And what are the real world applications that we can expect from digital twins?
So, really simply put, we talked about cognitive being this ability to be predictive and proactive. So then the next question is, well, how does it actually do that? Well, a digital twin is a way to actually do that. So before we build, before we construct, before we move anything, we build a digital twin of the real world. And then we say, you know what? I got a good idea. Why don't we go ahead and why don't we open up a new sports theater right there? That sounds like a great idea. Uh-oh, what if we did that? Look at what it does to traffic flow. Oh my God, traffic is flowing this way. Oh no, well, we got to change it. All of these decisions, before we spend a dime and we make one decision and then we didn't realize 7 moves down it was going to have this impact. Now within a digital twin environment, it allows us to do that. A lot of people are building and creating digital twins within the city so they can pre-approve the project or pre-approve the asset before it's actually built. You're seeing that. You're seeing it in healthcare. You're seeing the modeling of the human body and being able to understand how certain drugs or how certain procedures will be able to impact it. So you're beginning to see this technology become more and more advanced. And the more that we put AI compute power and the more that we model the real world, it will really unleash a whole host of new innovations.
And tell us, when do you expect we living in smart cities will be living in cognitive cities?
I think we're beginning to see many aspects of it today. I think in the UAE, very, very advanced. I think by 2027, from a government standpoint, I think they're going to really, reach an age where AI will be infused in the government. But I would definitely say, without a doubt, in the next 5 years, for sure, because you're going to be able to see your experiences being shaped, whether it's a city being able to give you real time and predictive information around how you get to work, or whether that's when you show up to your job, a AI personal extension of yourself has already handled 2 or 3 of your escalations from your either team members by giving them alternative solutions that they say, that's great, not have to worry about it. Or maybe you're walking on your way home and your Identic AI agent says, I can tell, Joseph, that your stress levels are a bit high. So why don't we take a walk down the park? It's really nice. And why don't we go down this nice park and you'll get the ability to calm yourself down before you go into the house and have all the kids say what's happening and what's going on. So I think you're going to see things like that evolving. It won't be this, I think, this awakening, this onslaught all at once, but before you know it, it'll be a collection of experiences.
So essentially moving from a reactionary environment to an anticipatory
Absolutely.
environment. And what role do you believe cognitive cities will play in shaping governance and improving urban sustainability?
Yeah, governance is a really, really important issue. I think so. When you think about cognitive cities, I think the first thing from a governor's perspective is you have to understand you've now moved into a world that is fundamentally around platform economics. So, platform economics for a cognitive city means very simple: the higher the level of participation, the greater the value. So, if you think of any platform, if there's nobody on it, then it's not valuable to you. From a governor's perspective, what does that mean? That means that because I'm now enabling cognitive citizens with the ability to be able to absorb and react and predict a vastly amounts of information, they now have the ability to participate in that governance model in a way that they've never had before. Government leaders now have the ability to truly tap in and understand on very difficult topics that today I can't, I'm too busy. But now that I have multiple times of my identity agents that are out there and looking and understanding what my preferences are, I now have an opportunity to give voice to a myriad of topics. And so what you see is the fact that decision making, I call it the Goodwill effect after my grandfather, Joseph Goodwill, value improves exponentially as you move decision making closer and closer to the customer. And in cognitive city, you will begin to move and understand governance, will get much closer to the citizen because they will be able to give greater feedback to those leaders. The second thing is funding. Funding is a huge issue, especially when you think about how do you sustain these projects. Well, again, in an infrastructure project, it's a very clear funding model that requires heavy investment, but there's not a lot of revenue coming from that. All of a sudden, when you move to an emotionally aware city or a city that is producing all this data and you have these AI agents, you now have new business models that allow the city to now monetize its core asset, data. And the monetization of that can fund a myriad of projects. So not only are you solving, I would say, the energy and momentum, keeping people involved and invested in what's happening, but you're also being able to bring in new sources of revenue, which is critically important because a city needs that sustainable economic source. And then lastly, from a sustainability perspective, really, really important. Listen, when we think about sustainability, our biggest problem is again, we're too late. Its damage is done. We've used the resource too much. Oh, now let's figure out what we're going to do. The fact that you're predictive and proactive means that now that I have the intelligence, I'm only going to use that resource exactly when I need it. That is a huge thing, right? Being able to manage a grid and being able to digitally model that in a virtual twin environment has a huge, huge impact on sustainability.
And you've spoken about cognitive enterprise as the next frontier for business strategy and innovation. How does this differ from digital transformation?
Yeah, huge difference. I mean, AI is a major change. When you think about a cognitive enterprise, it all starts with the power of people. In an AI world, in the next 2 to 5 years, you're going to see productivity enhance 2 to 5 times. Someone who understands and how to use AI tools, the level of productivity 5 times enhancements. When you think about companies, you're going to see, I think, in the next 5 years, a first company born with 50 million per revenue per employee, per human employee. I'm talking about a company that's worth $1 billion in revenue with 20 employees. You're talking about 90% of business problems being solved before I, as a leader, even know they existed. That's because I'm being able to model 95% of that in a digital environment, and AI is helping solving and bringing those together. So the fundamental shift to me is that for the first time, I think, we've really unlocked and decided to focus technology on the most important and valuable asset on the planet, people. And when you unleash that type of productivity, man, it's a complete game changer.
I wish we had access to your book, Joseph, You to the Power of Two, before this conversation, where you really introduced the concept of AI co-pilots. What are they, and how are they going to revolutionize personal and professional productivity?
The book is about Identic AI, and Identic AI moves AI from being merely a tool to now it's a partner. It's a personal extension of you. It's not just simply typing into a toolbar, but it's going to do things proactively, predictively to help your day and to help your workforce. It truly becomes a companion where that identity now can think, it can act, it can simulate understanding. All of a sudden now, I now have a true partner that allows me to be 5, 7x more productive than where I am today. And that is a transformation that you're really going to see. And we're beginning to see that now. People say, how long? I'd say, and the shortest is probably 2 years. On the longest is probably 5. AI is to the point now where you can ask it, is there a bias? Is there a point of view? Is there something I am missing actually in my perspective? And it can give you that. So the ability to bring these things together, a lot of people are concerned about AI being biased. To me, I think of it as AI is giving us an opportunity to move from unconscious bias to conscious bias, meaning it's going to show you exactly what you programmed it to do. And then we can decide to make those right decisions. So it really is about blending and figuring out. It's not let's go all machines. It's not let's go all people. It is this true blend.
If you had one key takeaway from the book, I know it's tough to do so, but give us one key takeaway from that book that you would love to share with, the entire world if you could.
I would say that the number one question I get is what's going to happen to me in my job with AI? And I would tell you, AI is not going to take your job, but the person who understands AI will. So if you want to understand how do you participate and how do you really become you to the power of two, this book is a great way to start you on that journey.
I'm wondering about, the heavy investments in AI and in smart infrastructure. Does this region have any unique advantage when it comes to potentially becoming a global tech leader?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one, I can tell you right now, man, if you think about the energy level that's in this region, I mean, I think 60%, it's a very young region, 60% under the age of 35. I mean, that's a huge, huge benefit because that means they're born into this technology, right? The transformational shift that they have to go to mentally to adopt the technology is far less than other places have to go through. I think number two, energy is a huge issue, man. I mean, let's you need a lot of energy to power what we're talking about. And if you think about many parts of the GCC, Saudi in particular, you have solar, you have wind, you have hydrogen. So you have a huge source to be able to build, I think, very efficient and reliable sources of energy. And obviously, without a doubt, a flow of capital. You have an amazing access to flow of capital, and I think that continues. And then lastly, I will say is the regulatory environment here. When you think about regulation in many parts of the world, it's done in the rearview mirror, meaning they regulate in the past. I think when you think about what's happening in this part of the world, they're regulating for the future. They understand and they're building things that are future oriented. And that is so huge and so important because they have a mindset of how do I use regulation to be able to help and enhance value as opposed to simply manage the downside. They're balancing, they recognize that, yes, I need to control this. Yes, there's a downside, but they're balancing that with an upside potential. So I think this region is really, really well positioned.
So, Joseph, we touched upon regulation earlier in our conversation. And many countries actually struggle to find the right balance between regulation and also a thriving ground for innovation. Do you think that actually some other countries might get some learnings out of the way how the Middle Eastern countries look at this regulation?
Yeah, 100%. I really, really do. I think that the first thing is a very forward-looking view at regulation. I think when you think about these countries, and one thing about the Middle East is that they're relatively, in terms of their participation in this, it's relatively new. And so there isn't this huge history where they can look back upon. Well, that's actually helping them. So they are very, very, very forward-looking in their perspective. And I think that's really, really important. I think the second thing that I think people can learn, I think from the Middle East is an incredible job, is really laying out what the vision is. I mean, if you go to many of the developed countries around the world, in my own country, if you asked a cab driver and you said, tell me, what is the exciting vision for the U.S. in 2030? They would look at you, what are you talking about? If you go to Saudi and you say, tell me, what is Saudi's 2030 vision? Man, everybody can tell you. And it's like that. Qatar has the same thing. This whole region, they have their 2030 vision. They have their 2050 vision. They understand where they're going. And so if you understand where you're going, then by definition, you know how to build steps to help you get there. If you don't understand where you're going, then it's really hard for your citizens and everything to understand, well, how can regulation play in this? Because they don't have anything to ground it to. So I think this region does such a great job of really grounding their regulation because they see and they tell everyone this is where we're going. And that forward looking is really, really critically important.
You have spoken at length about the emotional economy. How will emotional intelligence shape the future of leadership and of human AI collaboration?
You know, emotional intelligence, I think, will become one of the top three skills required, not only from a leadership perspective, but also from a competitive differentiation perspective. When we think about AI right now, efficiency dominates the conversation, productivity, efficiency. But let me give you a story, this great story of a Dutch supermarket. So they wanted to improve their employee experience. So they said, oh, no problem. You know what we're going to do? We're going to use AI to quickly reduce the amount of time someone waits in a line. And so they use AI to figure out how you can check out faster and everything. It was great. And that sounds like a reasonable thing to do. Except they found that customer satisfaction went down. They go, what's going on? Well, they forgot a large segment of their customer population happened to be those people who had more experience in life, a little bit older, a little more senior in life. And when they came to the store, they wanted to have a long conversation. They wanted me to tell me about how I did with my grandkids and what did I do this weekend. So they ended up creating a slow checkout line. So now AI is used to help that cashier understand who this person is, what's the last time we spoke to them, how is it happening. This emotional intelligence, this happiness factor, if you will, is going to become, in my opinion, the single biggest way that products and companies will begin to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. Efficiency and productivity, everybody's going to have. It's going to be what makes me emotionally fulfilled. Does this product, does this company, is it aligned with where I'm going to now and in the future in my life? So I think this will be a huge area of differentiation.
Yes, and Joseph, I mean, with all these big evolutions that we just talked about up the horizon, how can we make sure that this, or what does this shift mean for leaders today, and how can these leaders in the business world, also in the policymaker world, make sure that they stay ahead?
We do live in a world where all the answers are known. And so fundamentally, as leaders, you have to develop a skill of understanding what question to ask. It is so critically important. Einstein said if he had 60 seconds to save the world, he would think about the problem for 50 seconds and then solve the last 10. We as leaders, when we have a meeting, we already come in, we've trained ourselves. We spend 10 seconds on, here's a question, and the rest, let's execute. Let's go, 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 go. That fundamentally is a skill set that has to change and has to transform. The second thing that you have to do, I think is really important. The truth matters, man. The truth really, really matters. It's not so much about data security. It's about data integrity, meaning why do you care that data is secure? Well, you care it's secure because you assume it's valuable. Well, why do you assume it's valuable? Because you assume it's correct. As leaders of today's world, We cannot afford to make that assumption. Truth matters. We have to build our listening infrastructure, meaning you have to take the time to understand exactly what data sources you have in your organization, how are they flowing into those decisions that I'm making. And I don't mean just data sources in terms of when you're looking at a large project and your team is presenting with you. I'm talking about when you wake up in the morning. If you wake up in the morning as a CEO and you just allow the media and whoever just to hit you with things, man, you're being guided. You're going to have to sit back and say, what is my fundamental infrastructure? What is the fundamental things that I'm going to listen to? Who is it? Who are they saying? What are they saying? How is this balanced out? Because the truth ultimately is your only source to ensure that all these automated systems and all these autonomous and all this intelligence and everything I'm telling my people, that they're making fundamentally sound decisions because the core is correct. So I think that's really, really important. And the last thing I would say to leaders and to parents of all as well is, you know what? STEM is great. And, we've been talking about STEM for so many years and getting kids excited about it. And it's nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, and we got to take ownership of this, I think we did so in many cases at the expense of those kids that were creative. Those kids who wanted to go to college and major in psychology and sociology. Oh, you never get a job. Go to engineering. Well, they're going to get the last laugh now. Because let me tell you, it's about the rise of the humanities. It's about people who understand fundamentally how to look at a problem, how to understand and ask a different and unique question. And as leaders, we need to open ourselves up to ensuring that we're having that creative thinking, we're having that injection of thought in our business, right? Because if you don't have that, if you're a technology organization and 80% of your team is engineers, I'm telling you, you're in trouble. I am telling you, you are going to face challenges because you need to have people who can fundamentally look at that and ask differently. When I think about OpenAI and everything that's going on with ChatGPT and DeepSeek and everything that's happening, Beard and all these great stuff, people are all like, man, God, these LMs are generating all this great content. It's the output. And I'm like, no, you're missing it. Look at the types of questions these kids have figured out how to ask. Some of this stuff blows my mind. I never even would have thought about it. And this is the power, and this is I'd say the transformation that we as leaders have to learn to adopt and to accept.
And Joseph, looking back on your career, what is the most valuable lessons that you have learned about leading innovation or navigating disruption?
I've had an opportunity to engage with so many great leaders. If I had to sum it up, it's what I tell my team actually every quarter at our quarterly session. When you're talking about the future, you can get so enamored with what you don't know. You can lose yourself almost in that. But what you need to do is wake up each and every day and challenge what you fundamentally believe to be true. That is how you advance in the world of AI.
Well, it has been wonderful to talk to you today, Joseph, about the fascinating work that you're doing at Tonomus. And David, thank you so much for sharing your great insights.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you.